And so when the Westerners came to India and started learning about this in the early 1920s, they, got fixated on the sex part.
On the mic with us today is Cordelia Gaffar, an award-winning podcast host, somatic teacher, student of Tantra, and the author of 8 best-selling books.
Known as the ultimate joy goddess, she helps women connect to their joy and pleasure.
It just makes it so much easier to understand the human in front of me. And that's in all different facets of my life. I feel like I'm a better mother for it. I understand my sons better. I understand my daughters better. I understand my ex better.
After escaping an abusive marriage, Cordelia turned to tantric teachings to learn how to be her own lover first.
You become more human and less animalistic. Not that you can't have both, but you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
it just, you've already given your life access to being orgasmic.
Cordelia is on a mission to cultivate and integrate joy in every nook and cranny of humanity.
I'm your host, Ina Korobkina, founder of Jewel Branding Studios and creator of the Business in Style fashion course for entrepreneurs. And
I'm Ingrid J. Monday, aka Ms. Monday, a photographer and filmmaker and the author of the book, The Secrets of Becoming a Boss Bitch with a Heart of Gold.
welcome to another episode of the Rise Up and Fix It podcast. Welcome to our podcast, Cordelia. We're super thrilled to have you on the mic with us today to talk about the subject of joy. It seems like a very elusive thing in today's world. If we look at the facts, 2017, it was said that depression was the number 1 disease around the globe. And according to the Global Peace Index, 91 countries are experiencing some kind of conflict compared to 58 back in 2008. So we're certainly far from living in joy. As someone who studies joy and helps people reclaim joy, as the expert, what do you think are the blocks to us accessing this state of being?
Most often is fear. Just the fear of the possibility that they won't have anything to be attached to, because that's what joy is, right? When you're in a joyful state, you're detached from outcomes and things and people, and attachment's a thing. We're conditioned to believe that unless we are attached to something, we have status, title, then we are nothing. But the opposite is true.
That's interesting. Cordelia Gaffar, it's an honor to have you on our podcast today. You are known as the ultimate joy goddess. I love that you have that title. I love it. It's amazing. Can you share a little bit to our listeners what's behind the ultimate joy goddess? How did you end up with that name? And what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it means that I'm not my experiences. I am not my past. Even though I escaped a 20-year violent marriage, right? And even the escape route was a little bumpy, I realized, I was like, wait a minute. Is it possible that all these things are happening for me? I mean, even during the marriage, I discovered something that I call self-nurturing. And I thought, well, if he's not going to be the husband I require, then I have access to nurture myself. And I got curious about that. And I just went on that journey until I realized, I was like, oh, I'm so good at this. What do I need him for? So then I left. And then, it's not easy. Even when you get what you want, then you're like, oh, damn, I got what I wanted, And it can really be a lot. And in that edge of the pain, you realize that you're at the edge of a cliff and it's such a beautiful view. You don't have to jump off. Why would you? Because you went through so much back there. You got wings. Just fly. And so, that is a metaphor for when it got so just unbearable. I remembered, oh, I've been here before and I'm still alive, right? And that's the joy.
I know that there's a lot of listeners that are unfamiliar with your work or unfamiliar with your story. You've embodied this ultimate joy goddess persona, and you went through an abusive marriage. But can you maybe explain that transition a little bit more in detail?
From ending the marriage to now?
Yeah.
Yeah. At that time, let's see, it was 2020, so that was just 4 years ago. I had started my business in 2015 because I wrote a book and all that. And so I had been, speaking and doing workshops and stuff for a while, but I hadn't really reached a point where I was economically stable, right? Where I could be separate from my husband. But I also knew that was fear that was gripping onto me. So, in 2020, I was at the end of writing my book called Detached Love, Transforming Your Heart so that you can transform your mind. And it was like in those later chapters where I'm explaining all these things that I actually felt inside, but I wasn't acting on outside. And so in order to complete that book, I had to leave my marriage, and an opportunity presented itself and it was done. And, immediately I knew that I required help. So I reached out to a spiritual therapist and also a regular therapist. Actually, the court just gave me one, And so working on my deep spiritual repair at the same time I was, working on my mental repair really supported me. But I knew I wanted to go deeper. And I was like, in all these years of focusing on my nurturing, what have I missed? And I was like, well, now that I don't have a lover anymore, I can look at my sexuality. So I started reading books about that. And the Islamic tradition, I found a book called Taste of Honey, the history of sexology and erotology in Islam. And then I was looking for current schools where I could learn more. So I joined the Institute of Authentic Tantra. And I studied, for a couple of years there. And, I just experimented with some of the things I was learning. Mostly what I learned is, like I suspected, your sexuality is absolutely your spirituality. And the more that I worked on that inner repair, it became easier. So first of all, to detect when someone was flirting with me, like, you're married for 20 years and then you're just like, and also in my case, like, I was a covering Muslim and then I stopped covering. So then to even have people looking at me, on all those things, it was like, oh, yeah, he's flirting with me. But then it was then discerning like which flirts to respond to, And so, yeah. And so all those things combined helped me to find my inner joy, And I know a lot of people are probably thinking, oh, wow, she's, been studying Tantra and, all these things. I think it's always best to be your first lover, and that's what I've really cultivated. I'd have to say I've cultivated that very well. And so it just makes it so much easier to understand the human in front of me. And that's in all different facets of my life. I feel like I'm a better mother for it. You know, I understand my sons better. I understand my daughters better. I understand my ex better. You know, yeah, I still have to talk to him, you know, and I understand the world differently, you know, and I see, like, for me, if each one of us really excavated our souls in this way, then we would all be living the way we're meant to, which is in the frequency of joy, right? That's how we're created. Mm-hmm. And if we had that, we could have peace also. So it's very simple to me.
Yeah. In your opinion, is the frequency of joy the same frequency as love, or they're different levels?
Joy is higher.
Joy is higher. Okay. Okay. So I believe, and I feel like Ingrid believes the same thing. We're born joyful. As children, we're innocent and full of joy. And through a series of life experiences, we lose touch with this joy. So it sounds like this is what happened to you, because going into an abusive relationship, that's not joyful. And so my question to you is, it sounds like you found your joy after you ended the relationship, or you started discovering this joy within the relationship, but you really reclaimed it after leaving.
Yeah, I started rediscovering my joy within the relationship, right? When I decided that I'm going to nurture myself, that was the beginning of my journey. I would say during the divorce process, that was a really rough period. But even in that, I was able to maintain my joy, you know? But it didn't really go very much higher until recently, when I really allowed myself to go deeper and really truly discover who I am on a soul level, you know? And that's been the play. That's been so much fun. It's like I can actually be a kid again. You know, I forgot that I liked my laugh because I forgot what it sounded like. Oh, wow. I know it sounds weird, right? So then, like, I heard myself laugh. I was like, oh my
gosh. That's so beautiful. Aww. Now, you mentioned Tantra. Is this is this what helped you tap into the soul part? I think a lot of people have misconceptions about Tantra. As soon as we say the word, it comes laden with so many preconceived notions and expectations. Can you dive a little deeper as to what your perception of what you think true Tantra is, so people have like a full understanding of it, true understanding of it?
Yeah, it's an interweaving of sound and light. So you get to hear your inner voice while you're simultaneously meditating on different lights, which are the different chakras and elements. And, you know, just for your inner alignment. Okay, so.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it's beautifully described. I mean, we're all vibrating frequencies, energies, and light. So it makes sense. But what point did it get associated with sex and intimacy? Mm-hmm. You think?
Well, because this is a whispered lineage, and whispered means that it was passed from the teacher to the student with, you know, one-to-one personal experiences. They lived together. They grew food together. They did everything. They loved together. You know what I mean? And up until recently, there weren't schools in this. Because it's a very
very intimate thing. Oh my gosh. Intimate. Becomes something else entirely.
Yeah. So it's a way of life. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely.
Right? So then you document the way of life, and that's going to include sexual practices as well, because that's part of life. And so when the Westerners came to India and started learning about this in the early 1920s, they, got fixated on the sex part. And perhaps because that's all they could relate to. You know what I mean? But when they brought it here to share with others, it's kind of, you ever played that telephone game when you were a kid where, you say
Broken
one
telephone.
message into the, right? And then, and it gets to the other side of the room. It's like you would have said, hey, the chicken crossed the road. And on the other side, it comes out, there's a boat in the middle of the road, right? So that's kind of what happened.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Or there's another analogy where I think there's three blind men that are asked to describe an elephant, and one touches the trunk and says it's like a snake. Another touches like the leg and says, oh, it's like a tree trunk. So it's the three different descriptions of what an elephant is. So yeah. Oh wow, fascinating. So when you were studying Tantra, did you have a teacher that you became intimate with, or it was because it's a school setting, this is now they figured out a different way of teaching Tantra?
That, remember when I said you get to be your own lover first? That's what we got to do. So we learned a lot of self-pleasure. And it's a good thing because like the final chapter in the book I wrote, Detached Love, was about an invitation to self-pleasure. So it's funny. I had no intention in 2020 in going in Tantra school, but like somehow in 2021, I found myself there, and it's kind of like I write my own future. And when I was in school, that's mostly what we learned, was how to really touch ourselves and know sensation in our bodies again. And for me, I hadn't realized there were parts of me that were numb. So it was really like, oh, wow. And so.
Isn't it so? It's such an interesting thing because I know there's a lot of women out there that have never even had a proper orgasm. I'm sorry to say, and I mean, or they're in a relationship with someone who just doesn't know how to pleasure them, or they don't even know what they're missing. Because I remember the first time I orgasmed, and I was like, oh my God, what have I been missing? Right? Like, that was a long time ago. But I mean, when you first start, if you are in the wrong relationship or have the wrong lover and they're not giving, they're only taking, or they're only creating pleasure within themselves, it's hard. But once you've realized that this is available to you, it's amazing, right? Because it helps release endorphins, oxytocin. It's so good for women, like, or just in general, it's just good for men too, like to get that release, right? And so many women are in relationships where they're having horrible sex or no sex.
Yeah, there's also like a school of thought that within the healthy male-female dynamic, the man is the giver and the woman is the receiver. And a lot of us grow up being expected to give. As a woman, you're constantly giving, sacrificing. So we could potentially bring that within an intimate dynamic where we don't know how to receive, or we pick a partner that doesn't know how to give. So within, I guess, the Tantra, it's both parties learning how to give and receive and experiencing the depth of intimacy, not just the physical act of it.
Well, and on a deeper, yes, it is those things. And on a deeper level, we are brought into the awareness of our senses, in all things. Because remember, it's a way of life. It's not isolated to just when we're having intercourse. And intercourse, to be clear, is your courses are your winds. So we have inner winds and rivers and everything, right? So you're allowing someone into those winds and rivers. That is your being.
Beautiful.
So on a regular basis throughout your day, both of you are feeling sensual with just being, with just existing, right? So when you like feel the wind touch your cheek, you feel pleasure. When you smell, just someone's baking maybe down the street, you feel pleasure. When you see one little pretty bud, of a flower, you notice the color, and your eyes are stimulated, your brain, just behaves differently on a frequency of love, and you're living your life and walking through your day this way. So when you see your beloved, you don't just want to ravish her, right? You want to just share all the experiences that have brought you to this moment, right? And in that sensory, just acknowledgement first of looking into each other's eyes, and then just the sweetness of smelling each other's breath, you know what I mean? And then touching the skin just with the face first, and then, you know what I mean? It's like you become more human and less animalistic. Not that you can't have both, but you know what I'm saying? It's like it just you've already given your life access to being orgasmic.
Isn't that so sad, though, that so many people are living, are not in tune with their senses, right? And they're so disconnected from their bodies, and they don't even notice the small pleasures.
So you coined the term joy bonding, and you not only help your clients reclaim their joy in the bedroom, but also you say the boardroom. Now, some people might be thinking, how is that even possible, and what does that even look like? Can you explain a little bit how you help companies regain their joy within the group dynamic and how it benefits them?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, right, it's about congruency. Who you are in the bedroom is the same person you are in the boardroom, essentially, right? So if you don't, if you're not generous in the bedroom, probably not generous in the boardroom. Anyway, so that's the first thing. But secondly, joy bonding is when humans choose to connect at the heart level, right? Acknowledging each other's humanness, and just when you're at work, you show up for the joy of sharing your expertise with a company that you probably vetted and chose because you align with their mission and vision. To be clear, that's what you're there for. So the fact that, there's an annoying person on your team that doesn't work, as fast enough for you or whatever, should not get in the way of that. Instead, you have an opportunity to, see where you can create synergy. So when I come into a company, I will do a workshop where they don't get to talk first. They get to move first, because we have to get them in the same frequency, right? It's about synergy, because I'm a somatic facilitator also. And so first I have them move off the energy of each other, so we'll do some shoulder movements, and they don't even realize how light they're getting until we get to the end of this and I let them talk. But we do the shoulder movements first to move people's energy off, and then I move through the chakras and different body parts, so that they can, free up energy and, allow flow and creativity and those kind of things. In between these different movements, I'll have them draw, then I'll have them journal, and finally I'll have them share. And I don't even know how this even happens, but usually the people that actually don't get along end up getting along because they draw similar things or write similar things in their journals. So the fact is, you find the person annoying because that person's you. And so there's nothing really to fight about.
Wow. You're being reflected back, your own being.
It's like mirror.
Mirror, yeah. Fascinating.
Wow, that's so interesting. So We love to talk about healing modalities and techniques to help women heal and feel their best on the podcast. What are some techniques that you do on a daily basis now to, help get rid of some of this negative energy, negative self-talk, help the shift? I know you just said you mentioned rolling your shoulders, but what, you want to go into a little more detail?
I'll just say it this way. So our right side is our side for responsibility, right? And the things that we have to endure and kind of the weight of the world energy, right? So we begin with the right shoulder because we want to pull that away from us, push it out of our aura, right? So all the movements are not stretches, but exactly as I'm saying, you want to push that energy away from you. So if you were going to push it and you're going to be gentle about it, right? You're not going to yank it back. So this very small, slight movement, right? And before we begin, it's an inhale and then an audible exhale, right? And you can just really feel that energy being pushed away from you. And so we can just do that again and just push that away gently. Are you beginning to feel a little bit lighter? I'm going to do it one more time.
Yeah, I feel the shift. It's beautiful. It's amazing. The mind-body connection is real. Like when we really take that pause to acknowledge everything that we're feeling, any tension, and it helps the stress dissipate. Taking that time, super important. Yeah. Can you share some interesting stories of transformations? Clients that might have come to you really detached from joy, and the miracles that happened, that you witnessed happen as they worked through their blocks with you?
Yeah. I love to work with people that are willing to actually put in the physical work. So, for the most part, my clients are virtual, but this person, was willing to have in-person sessions as well. So we had virtual and in-person sessions. And during my in-person sessions, we'll go into nature to actually physically connect with the earth, and depending on what element we're working on. And so when I started working with this woman, she was she was detached from her body, but even more than that, she was fearful of really connecting deeply with another human, like taking on a partner. And so we started working together, and she, I think it was probably just when we went on our first hike, we were working on the water element. And she was mentioning how she had an interaction with a man, and for the first time, she was willing to listen, to hear what he had to say when he was complimenting her. Right? Normally, she would rush through that part and act very rigid and move on, but she actually paused. And she said she forced herself to look into his eyes, which made it easier for her to listen. And in that listening, she was able to even smile. And so I know that doesn't even sound like a lot, but it's just like she essentially had lived her life 50 years as a robot, And within just like a few weeks, she had gotten to that point. We worked together for about 3 months. And by the end, she was regularly having pleasant exchanges with men and had accepted, an invitation to go on a date. So that is a monolithic lift. I mean, that's a huge lift in like a short span of time. But even with that, she recognized, she's like, okay, I want to just experiment doing this on my own. And I heavily encourage that, I'm here to lift you up, right? And then fire me as soon as possible, I don't really want to hang around that long, but, and as long as it takes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So what's next for you in this world of joy and wellness, Cordelia? I know there's many projects. You've written very many books, and you do group presentations, and you speak at corporate events. But what's the next thing on your plate? What's happening in your world?
Well, the next thing I have going on is I really want to make this information accessible to more people, And so I am creating like a VIP membership where people will get a chance to taste a little bit of my introduction to the sacred art of intimacy, and a little bit of what is joy bonding, and a little bit of what is self-nurturing. And I also want to make myself available to those people. So like if they join the membership, then once a month, they get to be with me where they can ask me questions directly about any of the stuff they're going through, any of the content.
Sure,
Wow.
yeah.
Beautiful.
There's programming and systems in place that's been operating for thousands of years. So you are at the precipice of something incredibly unique and groundbreaking. And I hope people are willing to look at the world from your perspective. So I guess my final question to you is, how do we train ourselves to live in that state of the unknown so we can experience joy?
Well, that would require you being connected to your body. Yeah. So the stories that need to be released are in your body. The wisdom that needs to come into your brain is in your body. And so being, in the question and answering of that movement, my invitation would be, find like a somatic movement class to restart that conversation.
That's cool. Or work with you.
I mean, I offer those. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you tell our listeners? How do our listeners get in touch with you, and how can they work with you?
Yeah, come and visit me at cordeliagaffar.com. And also, if you want to see some of the conversations I've had recently, you can go to my YouTube channel and read some of my articles on my LinkedIn.
Thanks so much for chatting with us today, Cordelia. It's been amazing to hear how you heal people, find joy and balance in their lives and careers. Your approach is so refreshing and inspiring. I'm sure our listeners will find your insights as valuable as we did. So best of luck with everything in your future. And we're looking forward to reading your new book. So definitely we'll put that up on our website. And thank you for doing all the incredible work that you do.
You're welcome.
All right. If you enjoyed our interview today, please share and like it.
And if you have a unique story on how you are creatively engaging with the world, we can help you share it in a multitude of different ways. We are experts in crafting stunning photos, videos, and compelling narratives. Our mission is to make you and your brand stand out.
Please visit our website, www.riseupandfixit.com, to learn more and to connect with us.